I never thought I'd be the kind of man who doubted his wife. Trust was the foundation of any marriage, and for the past 8 years, I had believed mine was unshakable. Karen and I had built a life together, shared dreams, late-night talks, and the kind of love that felt effortless. At least, that's what I told myself. But looking back, I should have known that love like that doesn't just fade without a reason. It started with the small things. A shift in the way she looked at me, the way she spoke. Shorter, clipped responses as if every conversation was a burden. She had always been attentive, asking about my day at the firm, listening to me ramble about architectural designs and impossible deadlines. But lately, I'd walk in after a long day, and she'd barely look up from her phone. The easy laughter we once shared was replaced by forced smiles and distracted nods. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Karen worked as a financial consultant, a demanding job that often had her up late at night, buried in spreadsheets and market trends. But then came the late-night calls. I'd wake up at 1 a.m. to the soft glow of her phone screen, illuminating her face as she whispered into the receiver. If I stirred, she'd quickly end the call, claiming it was just a coworker or a friend dealing with a crisis. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then, the text messages started. Karen had never been one to hide her phone. We weren't the kind of couple that snooped through each other's devices because we never had a reason to. But suddenly, her phone was always face down on the table. If I walked into the room, she'd angle the screen away from me. And then there were the smiles, those soft, secretive smiles she gave her phone but never me. It gnawed at me, that feeling deep in my gut that something was wrong. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just dealing with work stress, or maybe she had reconnected with an old friend. But the feeling didn't go away. It only got worse. The first real red flag came when she started spending weekends at her parents' house. Karen had always been close to her mother and father, but we had a routine. Sundays were our day. We'd make breakfast together, go for a morning jog, and spend lazy afternoons on the couch, watching old movies neither of us really paid attention to. But now, every weekend, she had an excuse. My mom isn't feeling well, she'd say one week. My dad needs help with something around the house, she'd say another. It sounded reasonable enough, but the way she said it, too casual, too rehearsed, set me on edge. One Friday evening, as she packed an overnight bag, I decided to test her. "I'll come with you," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's been a while since I visited your parents." The way she froze mid-fold, her fingers tightening around a sweater, told me everything I needed to know. She recovered quickly, forcing a smile, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes before she turned away. "Next time," she said. "They don't want visitors right now." Her excuse was weak, and she knew it. Karen's parents had always been welcoming. The fact that they suddenly didn't want me around made no sense. I watched her closely as she finished packing, my mind racing. If she was lying about where she was going, then where was she going? And more importantly, who was she meeting? That night, as I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, doubt settled over me like a heavy blanket. I wasn't just imagining things. Something was wrong. Karen was hiding something, and I needed to find out what it was. I told myself I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just seeing problems where there were none. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't paranoia. This was the beginning of something much worse. I could have let it go. I could have ignored the sinking feeling in my gut, convinced myself that Karen was just going through a phase, that her sudden secrecy and weekend disappearances meant nothing. But I couldn't. Doubt is a cruel thing. It eats away at you, creeping into your thoughts when you least expect it. I found myself replaying every conversation, every excuse she had given me. My wife, the woman I had loved for 8 years, was lying to me. I needed proof. At first, I tried to do it on my own. I checked her social media, scrolled through her tagged photos, searched for any sign of something, or someone, out of place. But Karen was careful. If she was hiding something, She wasn't careless enough to leave a digital trail. That's when I made the decision. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who would hire a private investigator, but desperation makes you do things you never imagined. A friend at work recommended a guy, a former cop turned investigator named Mark Holloway. Discreet, efficient, brutal with the truth. Mark didn't ask many questions when I called. He had heard it all before. Husbands suspecting wives, wives suspecting husbands. Infidelity was an old story, but this wasn't a story to me. This was my life unraveling before my eyes. I need to know where she goes on the weekends, I told him. I need to know who she's with. Mark agreed to start immediately. He set up surveillance, tracking Karen's movements without her ever knowing. I told myself I was prepared for what he might find. I was wrong. 3 days later, I got the call. Mark's voice was steady, professional, but I could hear the weight behind his words. Nathan, I have something you need to see. We met in a dimly lit parking garage, the kind of place where secrets were exchanged under flickering lights. Mark handed me a flash drive, his expression unreadable. Whatever you're expecting, he said, this is worse. I took the drive home, my hands trembling as I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, and then the footage began to play. There she was, Karen, my wife. She wasn't at her parents' house. She wasn't anywhere near them. Instead, she was at a luxury hotel downtown, stepping out of a sleek black car. And she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall and well-dressed, with the kind of confidence that came with power and wealth. He placed his hand on the small of her back, an intimate, possessive gesture. She didn't pull away. They walked into the hotel together. The next clip showed them at a restaurant. Low lighting, expensive wine, stolen glances. She laughed at something he said, touching his wrist lightly. The kind of touch that was meant for lovers. The final clip. I clenched my jaw as I watched them walk into a private suite. The door closed behind them. My stomach twisted. I had my proof. His name was Daniel Royce. Wealthy, powerful, a businessman known for ruthless deals and expensive tastes. The kind of man who took what he wanted and never looked back. Karen wasn't just cheating. She was cheating with him. But that wasn't even the worst part. I called Karen's parents that night, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Hey, I said casually, Karen made it to your place okay, right? Her mother didn't hesitate. Oh yes, she's here. Just resting now. Lies. I could hear the deception in her voice. They were covering for her. I hung up, my hands curling into fists. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. Karen was lying. Her parents were lying. And now, I had proof that this betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing everything I thought was real. And I was going to make sure they all paid for it. Betrayal has a strange way of sharpening your mind. It strips away the comfort of denial, forcing you to see things as they truly are. After watching Karen walk into that hotel suite with Daniel Royce, after hearing her mother lie to my face without hesitation, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about an affair. This was bigger. I needed answers, but I couldn't rush it. If Karen's parents were actively covering for her, then confronting them head-on would only make them more careful. No, I had to be patient, strategic. I had to act like a man who still believed his wife was spending her weekends at their house. So I called them. Hey, Margaret, I said casually when Karen's mother answered the phone. Just wanted to check in. How's Karen doing? There was no hesitation. Oh, she's great, Nathan. Just relaxing. You know how busy work has been for her. A lie, spoken as naturally as breathing. And her dad? I pressed. I meant to call him earlier. Oh, he's around. Just stepped out for a bit. I could hear the hum of a television in the background, distant chatter. It sounded like a home, but the details weren't adding up. She said you guys had a family dinner last night, I continued, carefully baiting the hook. Did you all go out, or just eat in? A slight pause. Oh, just ate in, she said quickly. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. I had just caught her in her first slip. Karen had been at the hotel with Daniel last night, so if they had really eaten together, Margaret had either seen her daughter cheat or was making up an entire alibi on the spot. That's nice, I replied. What did you guys have? Another pause. This one longer. I imagined her scrambling for a believable answer. Oh, lasagna, she said finally. Homemade, of course. I nearly laughed. Karen's mother was a decent cook, but if there was one thing I knew about Margaret, she hated making lasagna. Too much prep, too many ingredients. It was the kind of detail someone would only include if they were scrambling to keep a lie together. I hung up a few minutes later, pretending to be reassured, but inside, the fury was bubbling. This wasn't just a mother covering for her daughter's bad choices. This was organized deception, and I had proof of it. Mark called the next day. You sitting down? He asked. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you find? A long exhale. Nathan, I ran a financial search. Your in-laws have been getting money, big deposits, all from one source. I swallowed hard. Who? Daniel Royce. My pulse slammed against my ribs. He's been sending them payments for the last 8 months, Mark continued. Different amounts, spaced out, but all substantial. 50 grand here, 70 there. Whatever this is, it's not just about your wife sneaking around. This is something else. Blood pounded in my ears. Karen's parents weren't just covering for her. They were profiting from it. But why? Any idea what the payments are for? I asked. Mark hesitated. Not yet. But something tells me it's not just hush money. If he was paying them off to keep the affair a secret, it wouldn't be this much. There's something else going on here, Nathan. A deeper deception. A bigger betrayal. And I was just getting started. I clenched my fists. I wasn't going to stop until I unraveled every single lie they had told me. And when I did, they would all pay. Betrayal burns, but there's something colder, sharper about proof. It takes away the excuses, the lies, the desperate attempts to rewrite history. It turns suspicion into certainty. And I had plenty of it. Mark had done his job well. I had high-definition video footage of Karen entering and leaving the hotel with Daniel Royce, hand in hand like they were some inseparable power couple. I had screenshots of text messages, late-night calls, and receipts from their secret getaways. But the real bombshell? The bank statements. I stared at the numbers on my screen, still struggling to process them. Thousands upon thousands of dollars flowing from Daniel Royce to my in-laws' accounts over the past year. It wasn't just hush money. This was something else. A transaction, an agreement, a deal that went far beyond Karen's affair. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. No, first I needed to watch them squirm. So I wrote the email. Subject: You should read this before you call me Margaret, William. I assume you think you've done a good job covering for Karen. Lied on the phone, made up stories, convinced yourselves that I was too stupid or too trusting to figure it out. Unfortunately for you, I'm neither. Attached, you'll find video footage of your sweet, devoted daughter spending her weekends with Daniel Royce, instead of at your house like you've been claiming. You'll also find financial records linking both of you to Daniel. Bank deposits, transfers, every single dirty dollar that landed in your pockets while you smiled in my face and played the role of concerned in-laws. Don't bother denying it. The evidence is airtight. Now the question is, what happens next? I suggest you think carefully before you respond. Nathan, I stared at the cursor blinking at the end of my name. Then, without hesitation, I hit send. The phone rang less than 10 minutes later. Margaret's voice was trembling. Nathan, please. I can explain. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the phone tightly. Go ahead. Explain how you've been taking money from the man my wife is screwing behind my back. Explain how you stood in my house, ate at my table, and looked me in the eye while selling me lies. I'd love to hear it. Silence. Then a ragged sigh. We didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, the sound hollow. Didn't want to hurt me? Margaret, you cashed the checks. You covered for her, lied to me, over and over again. And now you want to act like you're the victim? William's voice cut in, more steady than his wife's. Nathan, listen. There were circumstances, things we couldn't control. Bullshit, I snapped. You had control. You chose to take his money. You chose to let your daughter destroy our marriage without saying a damn thing. More silence. Then Margaret's voice, softer this time. Nathan, we were in debt. I frowned. What? We owed money, she confessed. Bad investments. We were close to losing the house. Daniel, he helped us. At first, it was just a loan, a favor. Then Karen, she started seeing him. He told us he'd keep helping as long as we kept quiet. I gritted my teeth. So you sold your silence? We didn't see another way. You saw plenty of ways, I shot back. You just picked the one that benefited you the most. Margaret sobbed. I know. We made a terrible mistake. But please, Nathan, don't tell Karen we confessed. We can fix this. We can. I hung up. Their pleas didn't matter anymore. The truth was out. And next, it was Karen's turn to face it. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating aggressively against the nightstand. At first, I ignored it, still groggy from the restless night before. But when it kept buzzing, I grabbed it and squinted at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Yeah. A woman's voice came through, clipped and professional. Mr. Carter, this is Detective Sarah Donovan with the NYPD. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding Daniel Royce. Instantly, I was wide awake. Daniel Royce. The name sent a jolt of electricity through my body. What could the police possibly want with me? My mind raced through a dozen possibilities, but I kept my voice steady. About what exactly? He's missing. I sat up straight, gripping the phone tighter. Missing? Yes, sir. His family reported him missing this morning. His car was found abandoned near the river, but there's no sign of him. We understand you and your wife, Karen Carter, are acquainted with Mr. Royce? I clenched my jaw. Acquainted wasn't the word I would have used. That's correct, I said carefully. But I haven't seen him in person. Would you be willing to come down to the station? We just have a few routine questions. I knew better than to refuse. Of course. By the time I arrived at the precinct, I had mentally run through every scenario. I wasn't worried about being accused. I had an airtight alibi. But something about this didn't sit right. Detective Donovan led me into a small, gray-walled interrogation room. A metal chair. A metal table. The standard setup designed to make people uncomfortable. She sat across from me and opened a folder. Mr. Carter, when was the last time you had contact with Daniel Royce? I exhaled slowly. Never in person. But I recently discovered he was having an affair with my wife. Her eyebrow arched slightly. And how did you find that out? I folded my hands on the table. A private investigator. She scribbled something in her notes. So you hired a PI to follow your wife? I had my suspicions. And what did you do with the information? I met her gaze. I confronted her parents first. They were involved. Involved? I nodded. They were covering for her, taking money from Daniel. The detective's pen paused mid-sentence. Karen's parents were paid off by Daniel Royce? Yes. She leaned back in her chair. And you exposed them? I tilted my head. Detective, you're not seriously suggesting I had something to do with his disappearance, are you? She studied me for a long moment. No, Mr. Carter. Your alibi checks out. I exhaled slowly, but her next words sent another jolt through me. But here's what doesn't check out. She tapped her pen against the folder. Karen's father, William Jennings, was one of the last people to see Daniel before he went missing. I stiffened. What do you mean? She flipped through her notes. Security footage places William Jennings outside Royce's office last night at approximately 10:45 p.m. My stomach clenched. What the hell was he doing there? The detective leaned in slightly. Mr. Carter, is there any reason to believe Karen's father might have wanted Daniel Royce out of the picture? I thought about it. The money, the lies, The desperate way they had begged me not to tell Karen the truth. Had William been worried that Daniel would expose them? I don't know, I admitted. But if you're asking me whether he had motive, the answer is yes. The detective closed her folder. That's what I thought. Karen was a wreck when I got home. She sat at the kitchen table, her phone in her hands, eyes rimmed red. She looked up the second I walked in. Nathan, her voice was shaky. They questioned me too. I took a deep breath. And what did you tell them? That I had nothing to do with it, she exclaimed. Because I didn't. But my dad, she swallowed hard. He's not answering his phone. I sat down across from her. Karen, listen to me. I need you to be honest. Did your father ever mention anything about Daniel being a problem? Her hands shook. No, but I know how he gets when he feels threatened. Threatened how? She hesitated before whispering, He'd do anything to protect our family, Nathan. A chill ran down my spine. Daniel Royce wasn't just missing. He had disappeared under circumstances that felt too convenient, too clean. And I was starting to think I wasn't the only one with secrets to uncover. I sat in my office, staring blankly at my laptop screen, but my mind wasn't processing a single thing. The walls around me felt like they were closing in, suffocating me under the weight of everything unraveling. Daniel Royce was missing. The police were circling. Karen's father was acting suspicious, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something even worse was lurking beneath the surface. That nagging sensation in my gut, the one that had first warned me that Karen was lying, was back, stronger than ever. So I did what I did best. I dug. I pulled out my private investigator's report again, going over every detail, every timestamp. I skimmed through the transactions between Daniel and Karen's parents, searching for something, anything I had missed. Then I saw it. An unfamiliar name buried in the list of bank transactions. Feldman and Associates. My breath hitched. I knew that name. They were one of the most ruthless divorce law firms in the state. I did a quick search, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Within seconds, I confirmed what I already suspected. Karen had been in contact with them months ago, long before I ever suspected anything. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just an affair. Karen had been planning for something bigger. I reached for my phone and dialed the private investigator. Did you ever look into whether Karen met with any attorneys? There was a pause before he answered. I was waiting to tell you until I had more solid proof. But, yeah, she's been to Feldman and Associates multiple times in the last 6 months. A cold chill ran down my spine. She was going to divorce me. And not just any divorce, he added grimly. She was setting you up. There were rumors going around, claims of emotional manipulation, financial abuse. I gritted my teeth. She was going to destroy me. It was all starting to make sense. The late-night phone calls, the lies about staying at her parents' house, the sudden change in her behavior. Karen hadn't just been unfaithful. She had been laying the groundwork to leave me with nothing. She wasn't going to walk away quietly. She was going to ruin me. And Daniel Royce? He hadn't just been some affair. He had been part of the plan. That evening, I confronted Karen. I found her in the kitchen, still rattled by Daniel's disappearance. She clutched a glass of wine, her hands unsteady. She looked up when she saw me, her eyes filled with exhaustion and something else, fear. I stepped closer, placing my phone on the counter. I know everything. Her breath hitched. What are you talking about? I unlocked my phone and pulled up the email from Feldman and Associates, the appointment confirmations, the retainer fee. I turned the screen toward her. Explain this. Her face paled. Nathan, 6 months, Karen. My voice was eerily calm. You've been working with one of the most cutthroat divorce firms in the state. You weren't just cheating on me. You were building a case against me. She swallowed hard, setting the wine glass down. I can explain. Please do, I said, folding my arms. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were planning to take everything. The house, my money, my reputation, and you were going to paint me as the villain. She took a step back, her lips parting. but no words came out. Then she exhaled shakily. Nathan, things haven't been working between us for a long time. I let out a bitter laugh. So your solution was to fabricate a divorce case? To frame me for abuse? Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. She was trembling now. Daniel convinced me. He said we had to be careful, that we needed to make sure I got everything. I clenched my fists. And your parents? Were they in on this too? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I let out a slow, steady breath. You disgust me. Nathan, please, save it, I snapped. Your plan is falling apart, Karen. Daniel is gone. Your father is up to his neck in something dark. And now, the only thing left for you is the truth. She was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. I had spent years loving this woman, trusting her, and the entire time, she had been waiting for the right moment to bury me. But now, she was the one drowning, and I wasn't going to save her. I spent the next few days in a calculated silence, watching Karen unravel under the weight of her own lies. She barely slept, barely ate. Every time the phone rang, she jumped. She was waiting for something, for someone, to save her. But no one was coming. I had spent months, maybe even years, feeling like the fool. The husband too blind to see his wife's betrayal, the man too trusting to realize he was being played. But not anymore. Now, it was my turn to make a move. I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over my keyboard as I typed out the email. Subject, your husband and my wife. I attached the photos, the videos, and the bank transactions, every single piece of evidence proving Daniel Royce and Karen's affair. Proof that wasn't just damning. It was inescapable. And then, I typed the recipient's name. Elizabeth Royce, Daniel's wife. Elizabeth wasn't just any woman. She was sharp, relentless, and known for her viciousness in high society circles. If there was anyone who could tear Karen's world apart faster than me, it was her. I hit send, and I waited. It didn't take long. The first sign came within the hour. Karen's phone rang, and when she saw the caller ID, her face went white. Elizabeth Royce. She hesitated before answering, pressing the phone to her ear with a trembling hand. Hello? I watched as she listened, her expression shifting from shock to panic. Elizabeth, please, let me explain. She was cut off. Whatever Elizabeth was saying on the other end of the line had Karen gripping the counter for support. Then, the inevitable happened. Karen turned to me, fury and desperation in her eyes. You did this. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Did what? You sent her everything. I didn't deny it. I just smiled. Karen let out a shaky breath. You don't know what you've done. But I did. I had unleashed a storm that she wouldn't be able to outrun. The media picked up the scandal within days. The story spread like wildfire. Billionaire's wife exposes husband's secret affair with architect's wife. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. The footage of Karen and Daniel was plastered everywhere. There was no denying it now, no escape. Karen's parents were the next to panic. I sat back and watched as their carefully constructed world crumbled. I knew they had secrets, secrets they had spent decades burying. And with the police already circling Daniel's disappearance, the added scandal of their involvement in Karen's lies was the perfect excuse for authorities to dig deeper. And they did. Old financial records resurfaced. Shady business dealings. Fraud. Karen's father tried to keep everything under control, but it was too late. The pressure was too much. The authorities reopened old files, and soon, an investigation was launched. Karen's family wasn't just at risk of losing their reputation. They were at risk of prison. Karen was unraveling by the second. She paced the living room, hands gripping her hair. We can fix this. We just have to. To what? I interrupted coldly. Lie some more? Bribe someone? Spin another story? She stopped, turning to me with desperate eyes. I never wanted this, she whispered. I never wanted us to end like this. I laughed bitterly. You wanted me ruined. You wanted me broken and alone, while you walked away with everything. Tears welled in her eyes. Nathan, please. No, I cut her off. It's over, Karen. The whole world knows who you really are now. A knock at the door. Karen flinched. I opened it, and standing there were two detectives. Karen let out a quiet sob. I stepped aside. She's all yours. Karen always thought she was the one in control. She played people like a master manipulator, weaving lies so carefully that no one ever questioned them. Until now. Now, she had nothing left. Her lover, Daniel Royce, was missing. Her parents were under criminal investigation. Her reputation was in ruins. And soon, she would learn that her biggest secret, the one she thought no one knew, was about to destroy her completely. I watched as she sat on the edge of our bed, eyes hollow, gripping her phone with white knuckles. She had called everyone, her friends, her family, even a few of her business contacts. No one was answering. The people who used to admire her, who clung to her like moths to a flame, had now abandoned her. I stood by the doorway, arms crossed. Still think you can fix this? She lifted her head, tears streaking her face. Nathan, I let the silence stretch between us, making her sit in her own desperation. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you have to believe me, I never meant for it to go this far. I tilted my head, pretending to think. That's funny, because I distinctly remember finding proof that you planned to destroy me. Her lip trembled. I was angry. No, Karen, you were greedy. She flinched. But I loved you. I laughed coldly. Loved me? You were setting me up for a fraudulent divorce while you were screwing another man and funding your parents' dirty business deals. I wasn't thinking clearly. Oh, but you were. You planned everything, I said, stepping closer. And yet, for all your planning, you never saw this coming. She wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Nathan, I know you're hurt, but please, let's find a way to fix this. We don't have to end like this. I let her words hang in the air before I spoke again. Deliberate, measured, final. You don't understand, Karen. This was never about just ending things. Her brows knitted together. What are you talking about? I took a slow step toward her. I know about Jeremy. The color drained from her face. Jeremy. The name she never wanted to hear again. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her body went stiff, her fingers tightening around the sheets. That was years ago. And yet, it's still relevant. Jeremy had been her first betrayal, years before Daniel. A young, ambitious intern at her old firm. Karen had seduced him, used him, and when he became inconvenient, she destroyed his career. Blackmail. False accusations. A ruined life. I had found everything. Emails, old HR reports, even the legal documents she had buried. And now, I had made it all public. The moment the scandal with Daniel broke, I sent everything to the press, along with a letter from Jeremy himself, detailing how Karen had ruined his life. Now, her name wasn't just tied to infidelity. It was tied to workplace harassment, career sabotage, and corporate fraud. She wasn't just losing her marriage. She was losing everything. She staggered to her feet, shaking her head. No, you wouldn't. I already did. Her breath hitched, panic creeping into her voice. Nathan, please, I'll do anything. There's nothing left to do, Karen. It's over. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed back onto the bed, completely shattered. I turned toward the door, ready to leave it all behind, when she whispered, Did you ever love me? I stopped but didn't turn back. I took a deep breath, then exhaled the last trace of whatever feelings I had left. I did. I paused, and that was my biggest mistake. Then, I walked away, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The fallout was worse than even I expected. Karen's career was obliterated. She was blacklisted from every major firm. Jeremy filed a lawsuit, and the evidence I provided ensured he won millions. Her parents' fraud charges escalated, and her father faced prison time. And me? I started over. No revenge, no regrets, just a new beginning. And I never looked back. If you enjoyed this gripping tale of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories. What would you have done in Nathan's place? Let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.